You are about to hear a story that doesn't seem real, but it happened. A decision made by teenagers, a game, a pact, and 2 decades later, someone came back to collect. And when he came back, it was already too late. You are about to hear a story that begins as a simple teenage curiosity, but ends with death, regret, and something far worse than anyone could imagine, because what happened here was not coincidence. It was not bad luck. It was consequence, and when you understand what was done that night, you might start to wonder if certain things really should be left alone. It all started with a phone call I almost ignored, an unknown number that kept insisting until I answered. And when I finally put the phone to my ear, it took a few seconds to recognize the voice on the other side, because it sounded distant, different, but at the same time carried something familiar that made a strange chill run through my body even before anything heavier was said. And then she spoke. "Vic, is that you?" "It's me, Amanda." And in that instant, for no logical reason, something inside me prepared itself to hear bad news, as if my body knew before my mind that this was not a normal call. It had been more than 15 years since I had any contact with her, and even so, after a few words, I asked the question that seemed inevitable, maybe in an attempt to confirm that everything was fine, maybe out of pure impulse. "And Aldo, how is he?" And the silence that came next was heavy, too long to be normal, and then she answered in a direct way, almost cold, as if there was no longer enough emotion inside her to sustain it. "It's over." Aldo killed himself, and in that exact moment, it was as if something inside me simply locked up, as if that sentence had opened a door I did not want to revisit. Because the truth is that Aldo did not die only that day. He had been condemned for much longer. On Monday, the 8th of January 2023, we met again after 2 decades. Me, Elias, Louise, Alex, and Amanda. Not out of longing, not for a reunion, but for a reason that carried a weight impossible to ignore. And when I arrived at the funeral home, even before seeing any familiar face, I already felt that there was something wrong in that place, something that could not be explained only by someone's death, because the environment felt too heavy, too silent, as if even the air itself was carrying something that should not be there. The lights were dim, the air was still, and each step I took seemed to echo more than it should, as if that place was too empty or too full of something invisible. And then came the first detail that no one could ignore. All the candles were out, not partially, all of them. As if someone or something had made a point of preventing any flame from remaining there. I asked, almost automatically, and Amanda answered with a strange naturalness, as if she had already accepted it. "They don't stay lit." We tried several times, and the way she said it, without surprise, without questioning, made me realize that this had already been happening for too long for it to still be considered strange by them. But for me, that was the first sign that something was wrong. The second came right after. The coffin was closed, completely closed, with no intention of being opened, and when I asked, she avoided it. She did not answer. She just said that the body would be cremated the next day, and at that moment, even without knowing exactly why, I felt a strange relief for not seeing it. Because a part of me was certain that, whatever was inside, maybe it was no longer just Aldo. The hours passed slowly, with shallow conversations and laughter that came more out of necessity than desire, as if all of us were trying to fake normality, while avoiding touching the only subject that really mattered, that night, 20 years ago. And it was only when we left the funeral home, around 2 in the morning, looking for a bit of fresh air, that reality finally caught up with us for real. We started to laugh, not about anything specific, but as if it were relief, a release valve, as if all the weight we were carrying had found a way to come out for a few seconds. But then, that laughter stopped being only ours, because another one came, from across the street, low, dragged, but perfectly audible, and when we looked, he was there, standing, still, among the shadows. A man dressed in black, almost blending into the darkness, but visible enough so that none of us had any doubt that it was real. He did not move, he did not speak, he just watched and smiled. A wrong smile, out of place, as if he were satisfied, as if he were proud. And then, slowly, he took a step back and disappeared, swallowed by the darkness in a way that did not seem natural, did not seem human, did not seem possible. And in that instant, no one needed to say anything, because all of us knew he had come back. And to understand the reason, we had to go back to December of 2002, when everything still seemed harmless, when everything still seemed just curiosity. We were teenagers, about to separate, each following their own life, and the idea came up as a way to create something we would never forget, an experience that would unite us forever. And ironically, that was exactly what happened, but not in the way we expected. We did not want only to play with the unknown. We wanted to prove it. We wanted answers. We wanted contact. And for that, we followed rules. Black candles, salt, water, and blood. Yes, blood. A small cut on the finger to validate it. At the time, it seemed exaggerated. Today, it seems stupidity. But in that moment, it felt necessary. We chose an abandoned building behind Elias's house, a dark place, isolated, too silent, as if the environment itself was already waiting for something, and we positioned ourselves around the board, forming a circle, holding hands, while Aldo and Louise placed their fingers on the pointer, and then it began. The simplest question, is there anyone there? Silence, for a few seconds, until the pointer moved. Yes. And in that instant, everything changed. The air became heavier, the silence denser, and the sense of control disappeared completely. We asked the name, and the letters began to form slowly. A-L-R. It did not make sense, but it continued until we understood. Alastor. And then the proposal came. Direct, clear, without hesitation. He said that he could give anything we wanted. Wealth, success, luxury, everything. But in exchange, something simple. Time. 20 years. And Aldo laughed, mocked, and accepted, without thinking, without understanding, without imagining what that meant. And at the exact moment he said yes, something happened. A violent noise echoed from outside. The candles flickered, the temperature dropped, and for a second, only 1 second, I saw. It was not shadow, it was not imagination, it was presence. Something was there, with us, and that did not go away. The years passed, and Aldo's life turned into something that seemed too perfect. Money, business, comfort, everything worked, too fast, too easy. While the rest of us followed normal lives, he seemed to have been chosen for something greater. But what seemed like luck was only the beginning of the charge, because the signs began. First, discreet, marks on the skin, like burns. Then, stranger things, candles that did not light near him, never. Not at home, not at the wedding, not at the funeral, never. And then came the dreams. The man burned, watching, always at a distance, always smiling, and with each dream closer, until it stopped being a dream and became presence, smell of something burned, constant, inexplicable. It did not come from the environment. It came from him, from the skin, from the pores, as if he were burning from the inside out. And then he saw, in the mirror, behind him, the man, no longer hidden, no longer distant, there, standing, watching, smiling, and approaching, slowly, like someone who is not in a hurry because he knows the time is over. In the last days, Aldo no longer slept, no longer ate, no longer lived. He only waited for the inevitable. And in the last call, his voice was no longer of someone trying to escape. It was of someone who finally understood. The time is over. And then it really ended. But the most disturbing of everything is not the death of Aldo. It is what happened after. Because in that dawn, when we saw that man on the other side of the street, smiling at us, he did not look like someone who had finished what he came to do. He looked like someone who was still there for a reason, watching, waiting, as if that had not ended with Aldo. As if, in truth, there was still something pending. And that leaves a question impossible to ignore. If he came to take only one, why was he still looking at all of us? Because that look was not empty, it was not random, it was a conscious look, directed, as if he knew exactly who we were, as if he were recognizing us, or worse, reminding us of something that we tried to forget. Since that night, small things began to happen, things that would be easy to ignore if they did not carry that same weight, like shadows that seem to move too fast, reflections that do not correspond to our movements, and that constant sensation of being observed even when there is no one nearby, as if something were always there, just out of reach of sight. I tried to move on, as all of us tried, to convince myself that all that ended with Aldo, that it died with him, that it was only coincidence, only trauma, only memory. But the more time passes, the harder it becomes to sustain that lie, because some things do not disappear, they only wait. And deep down, what scares the most is not what happened, but what can still happen. Because if there is one thing that night made clear, it is that some choices do not end when you forget them. They keep existing, silent, waiting for the right moment to come back. If this type of story holds you, you need to see the next report, because some stories do not end here.